You now tuned into the sounds of Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
Tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the next big thing, the latest up-and-coming sports journalist, your host, Nathan Snell.
And as always, thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. This is episode 379. And in this episode, we have a very special guest. But as always, I can't do it alone. He could not join me last night in episode number 378, but he's with us today. Brenden Potts. Brenden, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty okay so far. Mavericks losing yesterday was tough, but we're getting through it. It's just reminiscing on an amazing year. Really quickly, I know I wasn't here to congratulate you on the Mystics 2-game winning streak, but my favorite Mystics player, Jade Melbourne's getting some love.
For sure.
Just gotta toot my own horn and say that it's about time that everybody got on the train. We've been waiting for you.
For sure. And then, I'm not. We're going to talk about that in a separate video with the Washington Mystics. But thank you, Brenden, for painfully bringing that up again. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give a warm welcome for Misha Jones. Oh, wait.
Yo.
There we
Misha,
go.
how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I love the intro. I love the video. This is I'm taking notes over here. This is a high production, okay?
Yes. Misha, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, yes, my name is Misha Jones. I am on Twitter at Mish the journalist. It's missing a bunch of random vowels. We can spell it later. We're not worried about that right now. But I've been a hooper my whole life, DMV based my whole life, the V specifically. And women's basketball has been my jam, my whole, basketball career, my entire life. The Mystics specifically, since their home team, grew up watching them. The WNBA and I are the same age. So, it's just been a beautiful journey in this women's basketball space. Had the opportunity to play college basketball. So learned a whole bunch. William and Mary, you already know what it is. Go Tribe, okay? If y'all haven't checked out Erin Dickerson-Davis and her squad, you're late. Go ahead, get on that CAA train, okay? But yeah, so big basketball head, always been a hoop head, hoop junkie. Just happy to be here with y'all.
Appreciate you. Brenden, you go ahead and get started with the first question for Misha.
Yeah, my first question would be like, how did you kind of get started in sports journalism, and what have you kind of learned as a journalist this year in the WNBA?
So it's funny, when I was maybe 15 years old, that's like freshman year in high school. Yeah, about 15 years old. Everybody else was in school high school figuring out, okay, well, here's where I'm thinking about going to college, and this is why, and this is what I might want to major in. I'm sitting here like, I play basketball. I'm good at school, but I don't know what any of this, I don't know what I want to do necessarily, but I got to thinking about it really hard one day. And I remember telling my parents, I just want to talk about basketball. Like, is that a thing I can do for money? Can we make that work somehow? And so whether that's writing, whether that's speaking, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So around that age, I started going to journalism camps. I am, I'm all about the books once I get into it. And that really opened my horizons to really what I could do with journalism. And then I didn't have a journalism job properly until I was a sophomore in college. I was writing for a blog that covered the WNBA, and they needed a beat writer to cover the Mystics. So that was my first ever, dip into sports journalism. And of course I was hooked. I was a writer, but went to get my master's after William & Mary in broadcast journalism. Well, not even that specifically, just hone my skills a little bit more. And it's just a craft and a profession that I respect. I grew up watching the Stuart Scotts and the Cindy Brunsons and you know what I mean? Folks who know what they're talking about, who took pride in bringing audiences to different sports and making people love whatever game we're talking about. So that's the synopsis, the short version.
And that already, you kind of already touched on it, was who did you look up to be this thing, like, okay, this is how I kind of model myself after.
Yeah, I was definitely, Stuart Scott was, he, and I'm not unique in saying this, but he brought so much joy to what he did that it was infectious, that even if you didn't know, the ins and outs of the game that he was talking about on those highlights, you're like, I'm having a good time. Somebody scored a touchdown and we on a basketball court, but hey, I'm having a good time because Stuart Scott's telling me what's going on. And then Cindy, she's one of my mentors right now. She's just a true professional. She's been in all kind of different spaces with ESPN, with commentating with the Pac-12, with she's just covered all her bases. And as a Black woman in this industry, she has just blazed the trail for a lot of folks. So those are definitely two names that I really look up to. And then there's LaChina, of course, LaChina Robinson, the Dreas, the Shanaes, the L. Duncans. There's so many wonderful people who are on and popping right now that I just, Monica McNutt, DMV. Like, come on, we can't. I was about to leave out Monica McNutt. I'm tripping. But there's just so many people I can point to.
Brenden?
Yeah, shout out Sydney Brunson. She went to my school. It was she's probably one of the nicest. What was that? Sorry.
Go Cougs.
Yeah, go Cougs. That's right. You already know. Yeah, she I remember meeting her in 2021. We were doing Zoom classes at the time, and she was a guest speaker, and then she surprisingly remembered me a year later when we were back on campus. So that was really cool to see her again. Yeah, my question would be like, what's something that you've learned as a journalist or a fan so far this WNBA season? We're only 7 weeks in.
So, yeah, you did ask me that before. I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good.
The biggest thing that I've learned is what I think we've all kind of learned, which is that we need more people who have been around and understand the ins and outs and the context of this game and its history, the WNBA specifically, to continue to push forward and do things like this so that folks know where they can get reliable information from. The biggest thing I've learned is that at large, the media space was not prepared for this moment, and it is glaringly obvious. Sometimes I went to grad school in Phoenix at Arizona State at the Cronkite School, and sometimes I want to go back there and get my professors in conversation about what's going on right now and get it on tape and put it on Twitter for the WNBA and women's basketball community to hear, because a lot of the smartest journalists that I've ever met were my professors at ASU and helped me, craft my own vision of what I understand journalism to be and why we do what we do. And as it pertains to the WNBA, we're no longer seeking truth and reporting it. Like it's at the very baseline where the principles of journalism, we're just not, and I say we, the royal we, but there's people who are and there's people who aren't, and we know who ain't. So I think that's been the biggest surprise off the court, but on the court, I think I'm more surprised that the season started off on such a tear. I think I knew that the league as a whole would be better and the competition would continue to ramp up. And I told people I think the middle is really large this season. The top is small and the bottom is small. It includes the Mystics, unfortunately. But, the middle is wide open there. And I think we're seeing that with the standings. And we're seeing that with the level of competition in the games. I mean, a lot of these games, some have been blowouts, right? Some have been blowouts, but a very few in comparison to the ones that have been truly competitive, that feel like playoff environments. It's just been such a joy to watch and enjoy as a fan as well.
Can I ask a follow up? Because you mentioned that you were a college athlete, and I find it so fascinating how what the because there's so many college athletes nowadays using their last years, and I know a lot of college athletes that use their extra year of eligibility, but they also take advantage of schooling and go for their master's degree. Like, how big of an advantage is that to use that extra year or two of eligibility to go after a master's degree? Because I feel like with the use of the transfer portal and the extra year of eligibility with COVID and stuff, because it's the last year that it can be used, that regular fans don't take that into account, that this is all for going for a degree. So how or what advantage does that give college athletes going for a master's, knowing that it's basically all paid for and stuff?
A huge advantage. So unfortunately, that wasn't my situation because I ended up going from William and Mary to ASU. So we had to pay ASU some money. But in general, I think it's brilliant. I think it's an excellent decision. If anybody were to come to me and ask, I'd be like, stay a year behind in school and finish that master's degree if you can do it in a year, or get started on your program, whatever the case may be. Yeah, it's a huge advantage. I mean, just the opportunity to have higher education in itself is a privilege. You know what I mean? Whether you get there as an athlete or you get there paying your way or whatever the case is, like when you have an opportunity to forge even more far forward in whatever you're interested in, whatever career path, I'm always here for that, especially in the world we live in today. People are no longer, I don't know if people ever were, but people not handing you nothing. That's one thing I hear about college athletes all the time. You have no clue, how many folks I've heard say, athletes just, they skate by. You get everything. You got to work hard. 5 a.m. lifts, go to class, come back for practice, maybe go to class again. Like it's a grind. And so once you've done that, why would you not reward yourself with the opportunity to further yourself if that's really what you want to do, with no debt? Come on. I would have loved to stay at William & Mary if they had a broadcast journalism program. Unfortunately, they did not. But yeah, it's a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage.
And you being a former athlete, how has seeing the game from a player's perspective, was that transition a easy transition, especially now you get to see it from a journalist broadcaster's perspective?
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's something that I'll always have with me is that perspective of what it was like to be on the court, what it was like to be in locker rooms, what it was like to be at practice, on the road. Like the entire experience is something I'll always carry with me. And I think adding, getting deeper and deeper into the journalism bag has only given me more respect for that part of my life and for anybody who chooses that path for themselves, because it's not unique to college athletes. I think a lot of us, when we're in something, we don't necessarily recognize how, either cool the thing is that we're doing or important or, you know, whatever adjective you want to throw in there. I think that was the case for me. And so now kind of on the outside looking in, because, you know, I still play pickup. I still, you know what I'm saying? We're not fully retired. But now that I'm looking at it from this vantage point, it's like, wow, I have such a respect for people who continue to do this as professionals. Because my career, I didn't even use all my years of eligibility because I got hurt and I was like, my senior year, I didn't know if I could do another one. But just think about folks like DT, who's 42 and still competing at that level and is probably in better shape than I had ever been in, even as a, you know, like, to me, the level of respect is just, you'll never see me on Twitter just tearing people down for the sake of tearing people down. You know, I think there are a lot of folks who either haven't been in those shoes or don't have respect for the craft or the people, and are quick to do that either in the ways they write about or cover the league or whatever the case may be. You'll never catch me doing that because I know how hard it is for the level that I got to, and I can only imagine, you know what I mean, what it takes to sustain that level of excellence for that long. Even if you're not DT, even if you're, you know, somebody like Rebecca Gardner from the Chicago Sky who had a huge year and was a rookie at what, like 30, 34 or something like that. Yeah, like you know, you'll never hear me just slandering people for that reason. And I think that's part of the perspective that I have that we need more of, frankly. We need more respect for not only these women's basketball players, but athletes in general, man. They, you know, it's amazing what people can get away with just because they're talking about folks they don't know and who are famous. But I'll save that diatribe for another day.
Go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, kind of transitioning into like what's been going on in the W. Who's been your most surprising team and then your most disappointing team? Like, kind of looking at both ends of the spectrum so far this season, even though it's still relatively a young season so far.
Yeah. Surprising? I don't even know if I can say surprising yet. Well, I would say the Aces is a cop-out, surprising in a bad way, but I don't want to do that to them. So we're not going to say the Aces. I think I had the Storm in my top 3 preseason based off nothing, of course, just the fact that they got Skylar and Nneka and all them in one locker room. I suppose I'm surprised to see them still trying to put the pieces together the way that they are, based on the way that they played last season without the firepower that they now have. I kind of expected it to be a little bit more seamless, but I think that the personnel they do have, they'll figure it out. It's a long season. You know what I mean? We just passed the quarter mark. With the Olympic break coming up, people will have time to rest and recover and all that good stuff. So I suppose I'm mildly surprised that it's taken them this long to kind of feel like a real contender, like real cohesive. Because like I said, they were just looking based off rosters, paper alone. I had them 1, 2, 3, and they're sitting at 4 right now, which isn't too crazy. But Phoenix is right there nipping on their heels. So I'll go with them. And then what was the second part of the question, Brenden? I'm sorry, I keep forgetting your
who's been the most like disappointing team for you?
Do I have to answer that question for real? I gotta answer that question. That's cold. I know you see this. Natasha Cloud jersey back here from her DC days. It's been a tough go for the Mystics. It's been a tough go.
Yeah.
And two, you know, there's been some factors that have been out of their control in terms of specifically one factor. Brittany Sykes, I think, is part of their big 3 with Ariel and with Shakira Austin. And I think having her have to sit really threw a wrench in the system. And then Shakira, you know, being in and out, I understand why she's recovering, but you know, it's just tough to find your feet when you're not consistent. You're not getting consistent minutes. So they've been disappointing. I kind of expected them to be disappointing. I don't know why Dallas is maybe they're my more disappointing pick. I think maybe them. I don't know. Every game I think seemed like they're right there, and I don't understand how they're so low right now. I don't get it.
I think with Dallas, they've been dealing with, you kind of mentioned with Vegas dealing with the injury bug. And I feel like Dallas has been bitten even more with Arike now being out for a while and Satu not playing this season. I feel like they've been bitten even harder than Vegas. But I kind of wanted to, because I'm a Seattle Storm fan myself. I've been a Storm fan for about 4 years now, and I kind of wanted to plead their case, sort of.
Please do.
Hey, listen, it has been tough, like to start. I say it's been tough, but nothing can get tougher than last year. But it has been tough, like with chemistry wise. But I feel like their Achilles heel has always been their defense, and it's been their defense for years, not just this year, but they've been successful through their defense. And you can kind of see that through this season. They've been winning games through their defense. And I've asked Coach Quinn about that a few weeks ago, and she kind of broke down why they're so successful defensively. But you see it through many of their wins is their defense, and they're letting their offense figure it out on their own. But I feel like that's their team chemistry is going to figure itself out through the season. But they've been so successful through their defense and not letting teams like Phoenix score. That's why they were so successful a couple weeks ago when they beat the crap out of them. But they this team has the potential to win the championship. I've seen it. I've seen the potential in almost every win. They have the potential. They have the pieces to win the championship. And especially with beating teams like Las Vegas and they got Phoenix is a very good team, even though I just shit all over them. But they as they get the wins down the road, which I believe they can, they have the potential to win it all. And they have a very veteran squad. They have a lot of veteran pieces on this team that, and it doesn't come with egos. They don't have egos on this team. So, I mean, despite what people say about Skylar Diggins-Smith, they don't have egos on this team. So
look, you ain't got to tell me, man. I am a Skylar Diggins-Smith fan. Have been since the Notre Dame days.
There have been some Seattle Storm fans that haven't been Skylar Diggins-Smith fans, and especially when we first got her. And I just find that so just patronizing to what Seattle is building here, because I've said this so many times, she fits so perfectly with Seattle.
After you lose to Bird, you get Skylar Diggins-Smith, you go tell me you're not a Skylar Diggins-Smith fan. Folks gotta learn there's nuance. People have duality. We're allowed to change our minds about things. And when you get a piece like that, I don't get why you wouldn't like her. But yeah, that's my Leo twin. I love Skylar Diggins-Smith. I do.
Yeah. I've been a part of I do Zoom media availabilities because I live quite a long ways away. So I haven't met her in person, but I've seen her on Zoom availabilities and been a part of those interviews. And she just gets such a bad rap, and she's real. I came out of those interviews and I'm like, Seattle Storm fans are going to love her. And I know how much Seattle fans love their players. And I just sat there and I'm like, Seattle fans are going to love her. And so far, majority of them have.
Yeah.
Game over, yeah!
That's my answer for who's been the most disappointing. I make the argument that Dallas is in the same position that Washington Mystics were in last year when Ariel, Elena, and Shakira went down with injuries. Satu's not coming back till August. Natasha's not coming back till July 1st, and now Enrique's day to day with her Achilles.
That's like a 1-to-1 comparison. Absolutely, yeah.
So, my most surprising team has been New York. I've felt as though, and I still think they can make. I think they can get to the championship. But I think Connecticut stands in their way. I make the argument. I said this in the video last night that if Brianna Jones does not rupture her Achilles last season, Connecticut's in the finals.
Yes.
But I feel like with New York, Jonquel Jones to me has to be the best player. I feel like she wanted to prove to the basketball world that she could, lead a team to the championship. You have to be the best player. Stewie's going to give you buckets. Sabrina's having a great year. When Courtney Vandersloot comes back, I think that Liberty team is definitely going to make some noise. But those would be my two surprising. My most disappointing, I would really have to say Atlanta, but in fairness, Jordan Canada's not there. Like if you look, most of these teams are dealing with injuries. Yeah. So and one can make the argument if these injuries weren't happening, 1 through 5 looks different. Like Indiana right now, if the playoffs ended today, the Indiana Fever are an 8th seed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why there's 40 games, right? Yeah. I hope Atlanta can figure it out because it's different and it's, it's the same thing with the Mystics. When you're missing the person that you expected to be your facilitator, it's just different. Like Jordan Canada, speaking of the Storm, what about her being under the tutelage of Sue Bird? I mean, that's a lot of knowledge, a lot of ability at the point guard spot that Atlanta's missing. So yeah, hear that 1,000%.
Yep.
Well, and speaking as a team last year, that was we literally took all season to look for a facilitator, and we had to resort to from bringing Sammy off the bench to now. I mean, now she's got to start to give us some point guard minutes because we just couldn't. All respect to Jade Melbourne and the other players that we brought in to help facilitate, like Kia Nurse. She couldn't be our point guard. Like we tried so many options and we just couldn't find that consistent point guard. And so, I mean, hence why we brought in Skylar Diggins-Smith. So it's very important, speaking as a fan of a team who just went through this, to find that purified facilitator. And if they come as a scorer as well, then all props to you. But I mean, it's very important to have a point guard to lead your team, whether it's an up and coming rookie or an established veteran.
Agreed. I did have a couple of questions before we got. I wasn't expecting us to transition into the basketball take so quickly, but I wanted to circle back. What is some of the advice that you have that you could give to young aspiring journalists like myself and Brenden and others that, especially that have a passion for sports and can definitely make an impact?
I would say go beyond the surface level of understanding, because a lot of people have that. A lot of people can tell you how many points a person had. A lot of people can tell you who the top scorer was. That's, you can go to ESPN after that, but pay attention to the nuances of the game. Pay attention to the folks who, and this is not just advice for young journalists, this is advice for Stephen A. Smith and people who, who are trying to get into women's basketball and seem to have forgotten. Listen to people who are already knowledgeable in whatever sport that you want to cover. I think understanding when you're not the smartest person in the room, which should be more often than not if you're surrounding yourself with the right kinds of people and the right folks to help you propel a career forward, that should be the case more often than not. But learn how to recognize that and listen to people. Interviewing folks, remember that people are human. That was one thing when I started as a beat writer covering the Mystics after having been a Mystics fan my entire life and having no formal journalism training. That was a little bit of an adjustment that I had to make. And just remembering, these people are allowed to be people you look up to, but also you got to know where to draw that line, how to respect their humanity. And what I mean by that is not blow them up and put them on a pedestal and forget that these people are human, because that's one way we dehumanize people. So I think that's really important. And read a lot. Reading is essential. That's one of those things. It sounds very simple, but I'm talking about when you're scrolling on Twitter and you're seeing all these clickbait headlines, do you actually click and read through and make sure you're understanding the context and what's actually being said? Or are you dependent on Twitter and the feed for your news type vibes? So I think all those things are really important. But having fun, the joy, like I mentioned Stuart Scott earlier, I think people who have the most fun doing it are the people I love to follow the most. So yeah, I'd say those 4 things.
And I wanted to ask a follow-up to that. We've all seen the last couple weeks the discourse, and already Angel Reese, excuse me, I apologize, it's been a long day, I'm sorry. Let's just call it what it is. At this point, is just being harassed, and this was brought up by Lowe from the committee last night, and I agree with it. We all should have seen this coming maybe 2 years ago. And now when you're getting the Stephen A. Smiths and the Skip Baylesses and others, how do you balance, okay, we have the trolls and those that are just wanting the attention versus those that are coming into the space that are new but are wanting to learn and educate themselves? Like, how do you balance that?
It's about who you center. I think, at the end of the day, I don't care about the people who don't actually care about this game. And I don't care about the people who don't actually want to educate themselves about this game. And for me, speaking about, we were just talking about Twitter, the block button is there for a reason. Like we have the power to curate who we engage with. And for me, that's so important. Like there are obviously going to be times where somebody says something and this needs to be nipped in the bud, either face to face or whatever the case may be. But for me, I'm keeping my focus on the folks who are coming in and are new to this game and actually want to learn things. There are mistakes made, of course. If you ask me to go start covering the MLB, I promise you I'd make a couple mistakes because I don't know what's going on over there. That's not my cup of tea. But for fans who are coming in, like, I think that's how you balance it. You don't balance it. You just don't center the people who are willfully ignorant and don't actually care about growing the game. It's just as simple as that to me.
I definitely agree with that. Let's transition into rankings for week 6. I shared this with Megan last night. Brenden, this is the first time you're seeing this really quick. Let me know if you guys can see this.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this was my week 5 rankings. Brenden, you can fight me about it, as well as you too, Misha. This is my week 6 rankings. I would really just, I feel like this is fair. I mean, we can make an argument 1 through 6 through 7 all had cases, but I'm confident with these where my rankings are for this week. Your thoughts?
I mean, you already know what I'm gonna say, Nathan. That Mystics at 8.
Well, Los Angeles right now, Kurt Miller's got to figure out those rotations.
They do.
And Dallas with the injuries, Chicago, they're up and down, and they're a young team. So, and then, then there's Indiana, Aaliyah Boston. Congratulations for winning Player of the Week, most deserved.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. If there's anything, I might drop the Mystics a spot. The Fever, that 8 seed in the true standings, I think is accurate, even though they've had so many bumps in the road. And I think for a little while, I was just trying to not inundate myself with all the Caitlin Clark news that was just being shoved into my face and actually see this team for what it is. And so if anything, I might just swap the two of them. I agree though. The Sparks gotta do something. The Wings, they just need some players healthy. But the Sky, I would also bump them up a little bit higher because I don't know, they got that moxie, they got that grit, they got that. They're figuring it out. They've had the worst end of a couple of close ones here, but like I don't know. They've got some time to really pick it up. So I might bump them a little higher. I might swap Indiana and DC. But everything else. I will also say the Minnesota Lynx to me deserve a 2 seed. They deserve a 2 seed. They have been throwing haymakers all season. Consistent all season. They're 1 or 2 games behind the Liberty. I think 1.5 games behind the Liberty. Yeah, to me, they're the real deal. They are the real deal. And I think because, we all saw the dynasty era when they had Simone, they had Lindsay Whalen, Rebecca Brunson, and Tasha Williams Franklin, and Maya Moore. Like, because they no longer have that kind of star power and aren't in that dynasty mode, I think people genuinely forget about them, which is nonsense because they've been on a tear all year. So I think maybe I bumped them up over the Liberty too.
Yeah, and I think especially last year, or I guess 2 years ago, because that was the year Nafisha Collier was out all season. And so I thought you were going to say the Lynx when I asked about your most surprising team, because
they don't surprise me though. That's the thing. This doesn't surprise me at all. Because if you watched them play last season, it's like this was the next step.
Yeah, that's what I thought about the Connecticut Sun. But I feel like with a team like Phoenix going to Phoenix, I feel like they're so dependent on Brittany Griner, and it may be just a 2-game sample size with their games against Seattle, but when I saw them in Seattle, they were without Brittany Griner. She was still recovering from her foot injury. That was the game where Ezzy Magloire just feasted, and rightfully so, because she was the tallest player on the floor. But if you fast forward, the last game they played in Phoenix, that was a game that Brittany Griner played, and I knew that Ezzy was not going to have the best game because Brittany Griner was the tallest player on the floor. But I was interested to see how Seattle would fare against a player like her, because I don't think they've played a player like Griner at the center position, and Griner feasted like I thought would happen. So it may be a 2-game sample size, but I just feel like the Mercury because they have so many offensive weapons, they have to be dependent on one player depending on who they play. So I feel like that for Seattle's front, that was Brittany Griner.
I like that. I mean, and again, I make the argument 1 through 5. I'd say really 1 through 4 is interchangeable. I just feel like for me, Connecticut, and also too, somebody in fairness, they only played 1 game last week. So where again, the schedule, that's how I kind of looked at it too, how they looked within each week. Cause these weeks, 1 week we're playing 1 game, next week we're playing 3. It's just, it's wild to keep up with. Wow. So, and Washington, I'm being nice. And I think putting them there is fair because the 2 wins were most deserved, and it was overdue. Mm-hmm. And
there were a bunch they could have had. There were a bunch they could have had. Yeah.
Because the fourth quarter cheat switch is something. I tell you.
Say that.
It's something.
Can I tell you something that gives you confidence as a Washington Mystics fan, or should? And I know I'm personally, Misha, I'm a huge Jade Melbourne fan. So I was heartbroken when they traded her. I think the Seattle Storm getting rid of Jade Melbourne was one of the worst organizational moves that they've ever made, at least in the past, at least since Talisa's taken over at GM. And I understand the reason why is because they believe so much in Nika. As soon as they drafted Nika, I said Jade Melbourne's probably gone. But the fact that you picked Kiana Williams over Jade and she hasn't seen a lick of the floor except in garbage time, it just makes me question why you would get rid of a 21-year-old talent in Jade who has shown so much talent in just last year alone. And then this year, I understand why you get rid of her because you're focused on winning a championship and you want to give a young player like that more playing time and more time to develop. And sending her to Washington, sending her to a rebuilding team like that is the right opportunity for her as a player. But I'm just so upset because of the potential of her as a player is special. And the fact that you had that, the fact that you weren't call it as it is, you weren't patient enough to develop her because you had other goals for yourself as a franchise. I just feel like letting go of her or getting rid of her, sending her, especially for a 3rd round pick, wasn't a smart organizational decision.
Whoa! Now you got too much dip on your chip. Huh? Who you think I am? Do I look like Boo Boo the Fool?
Okay, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm not. That's all I'm going to say on that one. You got way too much dip on your chip there, Brenden. Worst organizational trade.
No, not. I can think of worse, but
not a good one.
But no, it wasn't a good one at all. It was like one of the worst recent like decisions in the franchise. And it's just about like this is just about like potential. Like there's so much potential in this player, and I'm glad that Washington gets to experience it. Yeah, but
we get mad at
it. games like she had the a couple of games ago, and yeah, the Mystics lost, but people got to see like, oh, Jade Melbourne's a baller, and especially like her time at in the NBL, like we see that and we're like, oh, this is a player that we have in Jade. Like she's a fantastic player, but she's young, so not many so she's not going to get a lot of playing time. And it's just sad that things ended the way they did in Seattle because she could have been something really special here. And it's cool that she's still in the league. It's cool that a talent like her is still playing in this league or getting the opportunity to be in this league.
He got me on that one. He threw a curveball at me today. I can't. What do you want me to say to that? I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I think Jay will be great for us down the stretch. But like right now with Washington, I mean, it's all hands on deck because the ship is listing on starboard and port side, and we got to get her back to port before she sinks. So I know we just got a couple of minutes left. But Misha, we would like to know, the question is, what is your why?
What is my why? You know how people talk about the smart people, at least that have come and gone before me, talk a lot about going back to who we were as kids and like being kids having all the answers and us being smarter as kids and dumber as we get older because we let the world change so many wonderful things about ourselves. And I feel like for me, my why is, Lil Mish. Lil Mish was, a wild little thing, did exactly whatever she wanted to do when she wanted to do it, loved what she loved. And I feel like there was a joy and a freedom that came with childhood that, we all go through things in life. And even as this journey of me wanting to be a sports journalist continued on, you know, there were bumps in the road. And I think it's easy to get lost in the sauce. But for me, my North Star is always thinking about that kid and making that kid proud, because there are a lot of times where I've underestimated myself. I've doubted myself, as we all do. You know what I mean? I think doubt is a normal human emotion, but there are times that I've second guessed myself and doubted myself and did not honor that kid. And I feel like this is a space that has always been so good to me. That is where a lot of my heart, most of my heart and my passion is, especially towards something that I want to work and do as a profession. And so I feel like that's a big part of my why. I want that kid to still be happy. I want myself to be happy. And I want to, the other part of it is coming up, there were not a lot of people who looked like me on TV screens or coaching or involved in my life when I was growing up. And I feel like being visible is really important as a queer person, as a person that uses she, they pronouns, as a person who, you know, is not necessarily femme presenting. We've seen what all the misogynist discourse around the WNBA with the more femme presenting players. And we've also seen the transphobia and the horrible things that have been said about players who aren't. And so I think that's also really important to me, because that kid was all those things. And, you know, I want to make that kid proud. And I feel like that's a big part of my why. But my why is a lot of things. I got a lot of wonderful people in my corner, friends and family included, acquaintances, people I've met along the way. So there are a lot of things that add to the fuel to my fire. But I'd say that's what my why is.
I love it. Most definitely. And you're doing big things, and we're proud of the work that you are putting in. You're doing your due diligence, especially, you know, you being from the DMV, and, you know, you got your eyes on a lot of the DMV talent. Wish some of it would come play for Maryland, but that's one other for another day. But before we wrap it up, tell us what you got going on your side of the world.
Yeah, so I actually just took a position as a producer on Good Game with Sarah Spain, which will be dropping here in the middle of July. It's going to be part of Wonder Media Network and iHeartRadio. And I think also a company called Deep Blue. They're putting out a bunch of women's sports podcasts. They just released today in Cannes in France. They've launched a bunch of different women's sports reports all across the nation. So helping to get women's sports fans all the information they need the way that the men's sports fans get to have it. You get your daily reports, you get everything you need to know about the games and recaps and news with players. So all in all, I'm really excited to be a part of that. Good Game with Sarah Spain, that's coming soon. And outside of that, I'm a regular guest on Gotta Get Up with Erica L. Ayala, a New York Liberty podcast. I'm working on some stuff with Can't Retire Project. Or can't retire from this. Melanie Page and all those wonderful people. We've been putting out some content, so make sure you're following us. Can't Retire from this on Twitter as well. And yeah, I'm on there, you know, messing around, putting music up there, putting all my takes, my hot takes, my spicy takes, my medium takes. So just make sure you're following Misha the Journalist at MISHTHEJRNALIST.
Congratulations! Oh my God.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
And we'll be sure to leave your Twitter, all those links in the description below. Really quick, my favorite episode we did with Erica was the Vandersloot. Their reactions was hilarious.
Vandersloot. No, that was I was so wrong for that. I knew it was still too soon. I was so wrong for that, but they're good. They're good sports.
Yeah, but shout out to Erica Ayala as well, man. She's also doing some great things. Brenden, what do you got going on your side of the world?
Yeah, so with Between the Lines, I just finished my internship over there, and I'm still working with them. So every year we put out our company wide mock draft. So what we do is we do like I can't even explain like the amount of research and the amount of due diligence we do on on so many prospects that we come upon, and especially with the withdrawing deadline, it's brutal. With the amount of players that decide to come back to college and opt out of the draft or whatever, but every year we come out with a company-wide mock draft. Like, this is who we think are the top prospects and in a given year. And this year we just came out with our company-wide mock draft. And I don't like to say that I had any part of it, mainly because I leave it all to them. But there's a couple of guys that I had on my list on there. So if you want to,
you were part of it.
Yeah.
Say that, Brenden.
Say that, man. Come on.
You gotta. One thing about this, you gotta take your credit. Nobody gonna give you your credit. So go ahead and take your credit.
Let them know you in the room.
My name's on the list, so that's no, but it was everyone who had a part of it. It was a really hard process. A lot of days where we had to have like emergency meetings and stuff to figure this stuff out. But that we just put out our list ahead of the draft, and then World Exposure Report. I'm working on a couple of article ideas about different teams, hoping to get in on LA, and hoping to talk about the discourse between Caitlin Clark and the Olympics and all that stuff, and then of course talking about Seattle. So there's a lot going on. It should be a lot more going on now that I don't have the NBA to root for. So it's gonna be fun. I'm going to my second Seattle Storm game on this upcoming Sunday against Connecticut.
Awesome.
That should be super fun.
I've never been to Climate Pledge, so I'm jealous.
You've never been?
Never been.
Aaliyah Boston. I asked her. How she does those Twitter Q&As. I asked her, what's the best place you've or what's the best fan base you've come upon other than your own, and she said Seattle, and I said, yep, that sounds about right.
Okay.
I like it.
So, yeah.
And for me, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow me on MarylandSportsBlog.com. I'll be covering. This is my third season covering the Washington Mystics. This weekend we play the Dallas Wings Saturday and Sunday, 3:00. That's gonna be brutal. But I'm going to be covering those games. Be on the lookout for a video on the Washington Mystics as I do my 1 month check-in with the team. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll also be sure to leave Brendan's Twitter also in the description as well. Misha, thank you for your time. We appreciate you and all the wonderful things you're doing in this space. Continue to do great things. Ladies and gentlemen, please like, comment, and subscribe. Episode 380 will be out sometime this evening, if not tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your evening, y'all. Peace. Stay up.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the next big thing, the next up-and-coming sports journalist, Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
thank you. All I wanna do is say thank you for everything you do.